Well, hello! It is the game of the year time, my favorite time of the year, where everyone's discussing what is worth your time and what is not. And we did our own run at it. This year on the channel, we kind of threw together a bunch of shorts for games 6 through 10, Phil and I did. So there's a bunch of that kind of content, which is a little bit more snappy. And then we also did our 5 through 1s, and we discussed them a little long form. Now, because of the way we produced them, we shot them out in bits and spits and starts. I'm more of a guy that likes to just sit back and enjoy a longer form content in a podcast form. This is basically that, because what I'm doing is I'm going to super cut it, take those bits, I'm going to mash them together and make a little still. And if you want to watch the game of the year stuff, it's going to be on YouTube. So this is a little bit of retreading of content, but at the same time, we hope you enjoy it in this long form. See you later. Have a good new year if you have yet to do so. Kisses, hugs, and belly rubs.
Top 10 of 2023. Number 10 is Grounded. Massive map, fun with friends, slower pacing, and it's free on Game Pass. This one is a must check out for 2023.
Counting down my top 10 games of 2023, number 10, Immortality. Unlike anything I have ever played, a sense of mystery, storytelling that is smart and ultra unique. You spend time scrubbing through fictional archive footage, and then some supernatural things start to happen. Immortality is a showcase on how games can deliver a story unlike any other medium. Immortality nabs my 10th spot for 2023.
All right, number 9 from 2023 is Callisto Protocol. Great graphics, great atmosphere, but yet clunky combat. That is my number 9 for 2023. Check it out if you get it on sale.
My 9th favorite game for 2023 is Escape Academy. Think a virtual escape room. It may sound gimmicky, but it's not. It works out wonderfully in this package. You have a series of puzzles that are broken into levels. Any level takes 5 to 20 minutes to complete, and you got about 20 minutes to solve all the puzzles. It's chaos. The art style is fun. The writing was pretty good. I enjoyed the story, though it wasn't that monumental by any means. But ultimately, the most fun I had in this title is sitting around the couch while friends and family are screaming solutions. It's fun to boot up when you have people in the house. Definitely go check it out. This lands it at number 9 for my games for 2023.
Number 8 for my 2023 is Venba. This one is short, can be played in one day. Heartfelt, meaningful story, free on Game Pass, worth an evening of your time.
Number 8 on my list of games I played this year, Tinykin. Players explore various rooms in a cluttered house stuck in the 1990s. Now this home has been taken over by insects, and the levels are built out and broken into different rooms of the house. Gives it a familiar feel whilst discovering hidden areas. Very rewarding. It's a little bit of a collectathon, but the movement is great. You can slide, jump, run, and collect all the little dudes that you then throw to pick up bigger items. Locomotion is fast-paced and encourages a familiar flow state, which is epic when you finally hit it. The writing and characters are surprisingly good, and I greatly enjoyed this game, which is why it lands on number 8 on my games of 2023.
Atomic Heart. Guns, boss battles, sexual robots. Number 7 for 2023.
Number 7 this year, the game that rekindled my enjoyment of JRPGs. Firstly, the characters and the stories of this game is really what holds this game up. It's completely voice acted when you hit the text, so for the most part it's like watching a TV show. It's charming, the character development is good, and the relationships matter. I enjoyed the story. There are others that loved the story. I thought it was good, not great. But the tactical grid-based combat was really what sold it for me. You're able to move these characters around the battlefield. They all have different abilities and skills. It is a tactical battler, so you're looking at different weapon types, magic users, and healers all alike. And they also have combos on the battlefield which reinforce the story, which is kind of a neat idea. A lot of JRPG does happen in this game. I got about an inch deep and a mile wide, and that was enough to enjoy the game while not diving fully into the systems. I really like the ability to do that. This game also comes to us on the Nintendo Switch, which is the perfect travel game, which is why Fire Emblem Three Houses lands at number 7 of 2023.
You know you've got nothing to play when a Mario sports game ends up on your top 10 list. Mario Golf, number 6, 2023.
My 6th favorite game I played in 2023 is a game that is much better than anyone is giving it credit for. It's an action RPG with a serious player onboarding problem. Too many systems? Sure. Barren planets? Yeah, at times. Too many menus? Yeah, of course. But still, one of my favorite games of the year. Not sorry. Why is it one of my favorites? Because it's Bethesda. In space! Starfield is number 6 on my list for 2023. Phil and I are here, and we're going to talk about some video games. Top 5 lists from you and I today.
We are.
Yeah.
We are. So yeah, go for it. What do you it's important to note, I think actually, that when you do a top 5 list or a top 10 list or a top 50 list, that most normal people um don't play all the main games every year, right? We are playing games from 2022. We're playing games from 23. We're playing games that are older than that. No one, unless this is your industry, is playing every single brand new game when it comes out. That's the whole idea of the backlog and how things get added to that backlog. So, our top 5 list is going to include old games, new games, because it's what we actually tackled.
Yeah.
And I think that's the right way to do it.
And it's basically the backlog situation, right? Like, we aren't going to get to all the games. So we are basically making this the top 5 games that we played this year. They could be Chrono Trigger from the 80s. They could be something as new as this, whatever games came out this year that were the top seller. It's going to be a fun list. But no, it's not all released in 2023. So if you're on that bandwagon, find a new bandwagon.
Yeah. I mean, I can't afford them all. So
I don't have the time. I don't think it's possible to have the time to play them all.
I don't think so either. With that said, should we start with number 5?
Let's do it. Our number 5s. Do you want to kick us off with number 5?
So number 5 for me is a game that I'm actually finishing up right now called Hello Neighbor 2. I actually found this game because I was done getting slaughtered in Fortnite, and I had just finished God of War, and I had put 50 something hours into God of War, and I was exhausted. And there's always a recuperation period after you play a really long single player game and you get done. You kind of feel out of dopamine, and you need something to kind of bring you back up. So I was researching short games on Game Pass, so I could get a nice little slam through this in a few days and pad my gamer score, if you will. And Hello Neighbor 2 came up. I never played the first one. And I will tell you, I was pleasantly surprised. I'm still pleasantly surprised. This is a game that they really force you to look at the environment. So you are essentially going through these various houses, and in each of these houses, there are 4 or 5 puzzles that need to be solved before you can get on to the next house and unlock the next cutscene and move the story along. Every time you go through the house, there are things that you can interact with, and as you try to touch and grab and pull different things, you realize other things can be touched and grabbed and pulled, and you realize there are different angles that you can jump to here. Oh, I never tried to do this. It's like a big giant version of Where's Waldo. So you have a wrench, and the wrench does certain things, and you have scissors, and the scissors can only do certain things, and you're going to need those tools to do various things to get the keys, to unlock the code, to get the thing that you need to get at the end of the level. So I think that Hello Neighbor 2 did a really, really good job putting together, forcing you to look at the environment and going. Once I've had to look up, I believe, 2 puzzles when I was there. Two of them I really couldn't figure it out. I looked up one recently, and I will say that they always have some sort of neighbor that's walking around the house or the environment that if they catch you or they hear you, they grab you in a frightening way and bring you back outside. And that's annoying because the puzzles themselves are already hard enough to figure out. That, if you step on glass, then the person hears you and they run upstairs and they look for you and you got to hide in the closet. And it kind of takes you out of the experience, especially if you can't figure out what to do. Right? I'm old. The people that are really into puzzle games, they're going to bang through this title in an hour. But for me, I'm old and dumb, and half the time I can't figure out what I'm doing, and I need to go slowly. And I wish there was a way I could turn off the neighbors so that I could just explore the house and figure out what needs to be done.
Do you feel like the neighbors add a sense of urgency to the gameplay at all? Do you feel like it's forcing you to act quicker, or do you think it's more of a cumbersome element to the game?
Yeah, I think that it definitely adds to the experience of giving you a sense of urgency. Well, obviously you can't stay in a room for very long, but the puzzles are challenging, and so you are looking around for clues. Sometimes they'll put a picture on the wall, or they'll put a smile somewhere, and they'll be like, oh, that's a clue. about where I could go find, but if you're running through a room over and over and over again just to get the person to disappear, then that can kind of take away from the immersive experience. They don't really explain it. Apparently there are ways that you can distract them and do things that make it so that they take longer to stay away from you, but I haven't figured that out because I'm not going to watch a guide. But all in all, I like a game that forces you to look at the environment that was developed, and they put such detail into these houses that it's kind of one of those moments when you finish a game and you're like, oh, that's how you did it. And that was there the whole time. And I didn't realize that was the switch. Like, I looked one up today and I was like, that's so dumb. I walked past that like 30 times. Time to beat is around 5 hours. It's probably taken me 15 hours because I'm much slower with these type of games, but still worth my time. And that I think that's why it lands number 5 on my list. What do you have for your number 5?
My number 5 game of the year is a game called Hogwarts Legacy. And I'm going to start by saying this game deserves more credit than it is getting. So there's 2 things that I want to talk about when it comes to Hogwarts Legacy. 1 is the controversy around the game, and 2 is the game itself. So we're going to clear the air with like the controversy, okay? When this game came out, I feel that it was overlooked and avoided by many in the gaming journalism community because of a toxic situation where people felt that they were offended that others were playing or reviewing this game. So it led to many of the game journalists and personalities not completing this game or completely avoiding it altogether. Now, you just write off a game because of like something going on in the political landscape. Like, that's not something that happens very often. And I feel like this game got lost in the shuffle because of that. Cut to like this year, right? Cut to the end of the year. Because of the lack of the coverage of this game, it truly seems like it has completely been snubbed or washed from all Game of the Year lists that I'm seeing right now. Now, as of this recording, not all of those lists are out. I'm sure it's going to pop up somewhere. But what I'm seeing over and over is this game is not being mentioned, not being represented, nothing. And for it being like one of the most popular games of the year right now, like, it's really shocking to me that no one's talking about it. So all that to say, like, I'm just disappointed that people aren't like shedding light on this game. Like, if it's a bad game, tell me it's a bad game. But it's like an elephant in the room because there are so many people that bought and played Hogwarts Legacy, yet there's not a lot of outlets that are talking about it. So the lack of coverage feels like a snub. And when I was building my list, I almost wanted to put this game higher on the list because it feels like it's underrepresented in the market. And as I continued to like think through that actual logic, it doesn't seem like a good enough reason for me to lift this like all the way to the top of my list just to say, oh, look, I'm going to do this because. But at the end of the day, like, I think this game is really good. I do.
Yeah, I mean, it's terrible when people don't have a sense of nuance, right? And you can look at a game from a mechanical standpoint and go like, wow, the ambiance, the environment, the world, hundreds of people put energy into building this over several years. And the reality is, even though I never played it, it looks like it was a good game. And it was right. Like, and that's the reality of the situation. It was a good game. And there really isn't anything else that you can say beyond that rather than it was a great experience.
Yeah. And like, you look at some of the different reviews and then we'll move on from this topic, but like Wired gave it a 1 out of 10. Right? Like a 1 out of 10, like you look at the makeup of this game and like that is not justifiable in any way, shape or form if you're just looking at the gaming content, which is what I think people should be doing, right? I understand like the political discourse, but at the end of the day, like if your job is to review games and tell people if they're worth their time, I think you need to do that. So we're going to leave that behind. I'm going to move forward and talk about the game next. This is the first title in this Hogwarts Legacy format. Now, for years we've gotten Harry Potter games, but it's never been to this detail before. And the scale in which they are using the Harry Potter world to build out this game is absolutely ambitious for a first-time title, in my opinion. This feels like if you were going to go make new IP, this game would be getting more attention than it is. But because it's Harry Potter and it's got all this baggage with it, it's getting lost in the shuffle. I think this is a highly ambitious game for them to throw in because of the systems that they've put in, right? The scope of the map, The level of the execution is top notch in regards to the source material. They're going back and referencing things that are in the books, not the movies, in such detail that you can literally read a passage and look at the game and they are following it word for word. Like, it's so impressive how deep this team went to build this out for Harry Potter fans, and I'm really excited to play it. You know, whimsy and level of detail that they put into Hogwarts alone is breathtaking, and you spend the first couple of hours in the castle going from classroom to classroom and looking in nooks and crannies to like uncover secrets. Like, it feels like you're a student in the hallways of Hogwarts at many times. Then it opens up, you get outside of the castle, and you realize the game is far bigger than the initial scope that you may have thought. And I really think that they have done a good job of integrating so many different systems, right? You're working in a big open world. You're hopping on a broomstick and flying around the map. There's the dark forest from the books that you're venturing into. You have an RPG system where you're plugging skills and unlocking spells, and you're going through the story, and different classes are fitting into the different skill types. Like, it's just very well crafted and created. And then you take the custom out, like the different outfits you can put on. There's a whole base building section in here where you're doing potions and herbs, and all of these different systems click together. And it's really, it feels like a 1.0 of Harry Potter, which is why it may feel like it's not like the 10 out of 10 experience for some, because it does feel like they're finding their footing. But overall, this is a great proof of concept, and it's a really, really good game. Like, I'm loving it. Criticisms: combat, same enemy types, anything that you would see in like a first time venture into any game is what you're seeing as a complaint here. But overall, the combat system they went with, I think, is different than anything I've seen before, right? It is action based. It is similar to like an action based RPG, but at the end of the day, like, I can't even liken it to something I've played before. And for a game of this magnitude to come in and completely throw a new combat system at somebody, it's just really impressive to me. Like overall, whether it have Harry Potter on the box or not, I think it's an impressive title overall.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you're going to take some rich lore that has books and books and books, and you're going to integrate it into a video game, and you do it successfully, and you should get the kudos that you deserve. And for them to have such an integrated environment where the pacing of the game was good, where you had the balance between, right, story driven, right, point A, point B, to like open world, go discover a new cave, go discover a new thing that's going on, and you have that blend of gameplay. I really don't, like I said, that's what people are looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to me, even though I didn't get to play this game this year, that they succeeded in that.
Yeah, you know, and I believe they did. You know, I got to the end of the game and I was done with the game. Did I do all the side quests? No. Did I 100% it? No. Was I done with the combat by the time I finished it? Yes, I was. It was time to move on. But I do that with every game. I get to the end of any title and I'm like, I'm not doing these side quests. You know, I'm not going to 100% that. And that was true here. You know, surmise it to say that I heard something that really resonated with me from Luke Stevens Live, which is a channel that I've recently been exposed to. I'm a huge fan of what he does, but essentially what he did in one of his Harry Potter videos is he said, this game is a solid 8. And if you love Harry Potter, you can add a point. And if you hate the world of Harry Potter, you dislike it, you can knock a point or 2 off, right? And I would almost raise that bar, and I would say this is like an 8.5 or a 9. And because I love Harry Potter and it was the first like book series that I really dove into, this bumped it up, in my opinion, to like a 10 or 11, just because I was having so much fun with the source material, and it was a world that I had dreamed about as a young man. And it was just really cool to see that come to life. So I think that this game is hugely ambitious. If anything, it has first time out of the gate problems. And as they continue to develop DLC or a second title within this scope, this is going to be a game that cannot be ignored. And lastly, what I'll say, based on the lead into this event, this topic earlier, is when you watch the Game Awards, this feels like it's the 10,000-pound gorilla in the room. And then just today, as of this recording, you see a Forbes article that comes out that says Hogwarts Legacy is beating Modern Warfare 3 as the best-selling game of 2023. This is the best game of the year, and it's not represented anywhere. And I think that there's something wrong with that, because this is a great game. A lot of people are playing it, and I think it's well worth the time, even if you're remotely into Harry Potter at all. My number 5,
Yeah,
Harry
yeah,
Potter, Hogwarts Legacy.
it's a it's a
There's
it's
my
a
soapbox,
disappointing.
folks. You're welcome.
Yeah, yeah. It's a disappointing scene. Move on to number 4.
Let's do it. Number
Okay,
4.
number 4 for me is going to be Diablo 4.
Nice.
So for me, here's the thing. This is probably the big disappointment or the big like realization as a grown adult playing video games that we've just outgrown the model. There were so many things that this game did really well. People complained in Diablo 3 that it was too cartoony. Well, this one's dark. People complained, oh, that you were on a tight rail with Diablo 3, that you were on the story, you had to play through the story exactly that way. This one is an open world. There were so many things that they did really well. You could go do side quests all day long. You could go fight bosses. You could go hang out with your friends. You could grind the story. You could like the graphics and the fact that you could find different pieces in the world, and you could keep that look of your character while finding new items, so that you didn't have to give up an item because it looked cool. There were so many things that they did well with this game, and there were so many things that they liked. But I think that what was missing was some sort of social element. And they tried to do that with the various live events and the different things that they had popping up, but it was so much all the time that I think that I became sort of desensitized going around the environment where it wasn't meaningful. And really, I've always struggled with Diablo games and just RPG games in general, where if I take a character to a certain level, and I've beaten the story, and I think I stopped at level 51 or 52. I mean, essentially, I got to the place where I was allowed to up the difficulty to the next difficulty, so nightmare mode, and there's new things that are unlocked with that mode that you couldn't do in the earlier mode. So I grounded out and I did the big Cathedral of Light mission where you got to go beat this really hard dungeon, and then it unlocks and you can turn the difficulty up. And then I started playing it again, and I just sat there with my hands on my keyboard, and I was like, I'm not doing this. Right, like I'm definitely not starting a new character, and I know that they have seasonal characters, but at 36 years old, I've just put all this time into 51. The max is 100, and I'm seeing what it's going to take to get to 100 with all these other great games out there, and I'm just not going to do it. And I think that no one has figured out what World of Warcraft captured 20 years ago with the social element of online, right? Where you can get together and do missions with your friends, and people have tried to replicate it, right? Destiny has done the 6-hour raids, but none of us are going to play video games for 6 hours, and we definitely don't have 6 friends or
First
4
in the
friends
world. Yeah, never this guy.
at this point, right? And people have tried it, but no one has been able to replicate that feeling of being in a brand new environment and hanging out with your friends and going, oh, I wonder what's going on over here. Diablo definitely had that missing, right? You never were really like, I wonder what's over here. You were like, I'm going to grind, go to the next, right? Get in, go, clear, spam, get your gear, get out and do it again. And for that reason, it's not higher on my list. It's obviously still number 4 on my list, which is still a great spot. I think that they made so many great improvements to it, and there was so much pressure being put on them to deliver a great game that I give them kudos for that. But all in all, like I might pick this up for an hour or two every once in a while, but I'm probably not going to play this. And I don't necessarily know that there's even anything wrong with the game. It just may be that I've outgrown that model. So that's why it sits at number 4 for me.
I think that's fair. That's one of those games that I'd love to go back and play more, like with you. Like we were really excited and jazzed on it when it came out, and we got a few sessions in, like maybe 3 to 5, not really sure where we landed there, but I really enjoyed my time with it. And then when they came out with season 2 so rapidly, and they're like, start a new character, I'm like, I haven't even finished the campaign. And then at that point, my buddies were ahead of me, and I was like, well, shiny, and then I was on to the next thing. But I think you do well to break it down in regard to almost like the fatigue that people are getting with series that come out, time and time again. Like it's almost too familiar, but you can almost feel like the hooks are good. It's a really weird dance that they have to play, right? Because it has to be a live service game, which is a very difficult needle to thread in 2023.
Yeah, I mean, I think that your statement right there is exactly right. I mean, at least this is how I'm feeling, is that we're waiting for some new IPs. And like, I get that there are certain restrictions within the gaming sphere that you have to operate under certain rules, right? You have to, this thing does this and this color does this and this is good and this is bad and you can't jump over this, right? But there's ways that you can disguise that, right? And I've talked extensively with you between here and BLB about climbing, right? And how you can take, tasks that you do over and over and over again and disguise them as not that, and make them more interesting. And I think that, hey, do I need to grind on D4 and pick up 4,000 different swords that are all one slightly better than the other? Do I need to do that? Or can you have the same experience with 3? Right. Can you, a game that, I don't know, is Fortnite somewhere in your top 5?
It is not this year.
Good. So then I can talk. It's not in mine either. Okay. So then I can say, like, Fortnite encapsulates what it means to have social events there. That's why they're winning right now, because they are the closest to capturing what World of Warcraft captured years ago, which was, they have these big live concerts and they have these things that bring people back, right? And this is a side conversation about the amazingness of Fortnite. It just isn't in my list this year because I'm not feeling that this year, but I still give them kudos. They bring back OG Fortnite. They bring back Zero Build. They do a concert. They, every IP, they have a concert with Eminem, right? They do all these things. That's like, RPG based games are going to have to do stuff like that to keep people going. Like, if you're going to have a live entity, like a game like Diablo 4 that people are going to come back to, it has to be a lifestyle. And it has to be like, oh, hey, on Wednesday, if you don't play on Wednesday, there's going to be this boss that you have to fight. And it has to be, there's going to be somebody's going to be there. There's going to be an AMA with a celebrity. There's going to be somebody's going to be in the game that you're going to be able to go visit them. You're going to do something to bring people back every single week or quarterly or whatever you do. And you have to build the community around that event. And if D4 does something like that with future iterations and with their expansion, whenever that is ultimately, or DLC, whenever that's going to come out, they will see more success because the framework of grinding is there. The cool graphics are there. The game is beautiful. It plays well. It gives you all the things you want to do. The tech trees are kind of interesting and allow for various playthroughs if that's your thing. But what's missing is the social component. Yeah. And right, how many, you and I aren't even playing Fortnite, but we know and that those things are going on.
Game of the year last year. I mean, we were hot and heavy like later part of last year, early 2023, and just kind of fell off altogether because it was time for a change, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, but like, even though we're not playing it, it's still in top of mind, right? Like, we know what's going on, right? We know, oh, Lego Fortnite just came out. Oh, Eminem concert just came out. Even though we're not even playing the game.
Still booting into it and checking it out.
Right.
Getting the ice.
We're still...
that is the game that I will always have updated. Just in case like you hop on and you're like, hey, Fortnite, like that's the game that I always have updated. And like, does it come in handy? Very rarely, but I'm not going to miss out when my buddies are on.
Right. So they have put on a masterclass, and I think if D4 does something more like that, they will see more success. So number 4 for me. What's your number 4?
My number 4 is a game called Super Mario Wonder. This one came out in 2023 and sits on my number 4 spot because this is whimsy. This is unfettered whimsy at all ends. So let me walk back a little bit. 2D Mario games. I would say my favorite is Super Mario World. Came out in 1990. Since then, Nintendo has come out with 7 titles that are all 2D Mario games, and every time I've played one, I have been disappointed. That includes the Mario Maker games, that includes all of the different entries that I've come out and played. I feel like they've never captured what Mario World did in terms of like teaching you how to play the game, and just the newness of that was there was never anything unique enough to expand upon it. Now, what I'm not mentioning in the 2D Mario games is all of the 3D Mario games. So a whole different discussion. We're just talking 2D here. Super Mario Wonder is a game that has one of the best loops I think I've ever played. And by that I mean, what happens in each one of those Mario levels is you pop in and you know how Mario works. You jump, you go to the basic mechanics. The first like quarter to third of that level is just a classic Mario game. And then they basically put in a Wonder Flower, and when you touch this Wonder Flower, something unique and special happens in that level. Sometimes it's a new enemy type, sometimes you turn into an enemy, sometimes things goes psychedelic and all of a sudden you're floating through the sky. And then you have the experience, you kind of get used to it, you play through the rest of the level, and the level is over. And this loop is anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes depending on the level. Now, is there a lot of 15-minute levels? No, they're normally like 10-minute levels. But essentially that loop of going into a level, understanding dynamics, having the dynamics changed in a unique way, reestablishing the dynamics, and then finishing the level in a short dopamine hit is just like some of the best game design I have ever seen. You then couple that with the fact that they've taken the timer out of these 2D Mario levels, which means you are now encouraged to explore each level. You now have the time to go look for the secrets, to find the Wonder Flowers, to find the special collectibles. And you want to spend the time in there because you want to see what's unique and special about each one of these specific levels in Super Mario Wonder. That said, like, this is a game that I have got probably 60 to 70% of the way through. And at that point, I was just like, this is on the Game of the Year list. No doubt about it. Like, this loop is amazing. It's Nintendo at their best. They're establishing not only what a Mario game can be, but they are expanding it a way it has not been done before since the 90s, in my opinion. I'm blown away. And then on top of that, you add in the multiplayer where I'm playing with my kids. They turn into ghosts and then I just have to touch their little ghost in the air and they come back to life. So now what you've done is you enabled me as an adult gamer where I can play the more challenging levels and just continually save my kids over and over to keep them engaged in what's happening. Like, they don't run out of lives and then go away. They continue to populate on the screen. Like, it's just very, very well done, and seems like it's hit a loop that is one of the best loops in video games I've seen in a very long time. For me to get 70% through a game and say, I don't want to play this anymore because it's so good that I know I'll have an opportunity to come back and enjoy this as a palate cleanser, says something greatly in my opinion, because I am a video game snob, and Mario Wonder is on my top 5 list, sitting at number 4.
Well, what you said was perfect, and it speaks to the core philosophy of what makes a great game, which is, you know, that somebody over at Nintendo, prior to the development of this game, said, what are all the problems with our games? And they said, well, people don't like it when people die and they can't come back.
Mm-hmm.
Timer stresses people out. People want to be able to explore. The levels get repetitive and boring. And they wrote down all these notes and they were like, we're going to fix this. We're going to fix this. And we're going to fix this. And this just goes to show when all of the mechanics reinforce the core experience, whatever that, if it's a story, right? I always go back to jumping, but if you're going to do a story mission, you can't do anything too tedious. You can't do any, because you're in the middle of a narrative and you don't want someone to not be engaged, right? You don't want someone to be disconnected from the story because of climbing or because of having to go do too many fetch quests. If you're going to do an open world explore game, you're going to need to make it quick, people to be able to get places quickly. You're going to need to move people around fast. You're going to need to be able to do things so that they're incentivized to continue to do whatever your end goal is. And it seems to me that Mario has done that here. They understood what their weaknesses were, and they were like, we're going to fix all of those with this game.
Yeah, it really does. And like, I think what they've done is like, they've left like the old school, this is the standard of Mario behind, and they've tried to break the model here. And it's brilliant. You know what I mean? Well, Mario always has a timer. Well, you always have to do it like this. And it really feels like they went out on a limb and they're like, no, we're going to break things. And they did. Like, I don't know how they expand upon this further, but that loop, man, is so dang good. Like, it just is. Like, I can't get, I want to be playing it right now. And like, I'm like trying to knock other stuff off my backlog because that feels like a chore. And I know I'm coming back to finish Mario Wonder. So I'm blown away. I am a guy that would not go out and buy this game on day one. It was gifted to me while I was sick. And boy, am I glad I did, because if you would have told me as somebody walking off the street, go play Mario Wonder, it's one of the best, I'd be like, yeah, I've done Mario. I get it. Like 2D Mario. Yeah, no, I get it. And boy, I'm very surprised that this landed on my top 10. But as I'm looking through my list of games that I completed, this just nails the fun meter, like almost better than anything else in my list. Like, this is like unapologetic fun, and I know I can pick it up, hand it to anybody, and they can plug in and have a good time.
So what you're saying is I should have bought this instead of classic Mario Party. That's what you're telling me.
I mean, yeah, that's essentially what I'm telling you. But hey, do you still get to rotate the stick on the Switch? Is that how that works?
Oh no. God, yeah. That game should be buried in the trash outside, because that causes more family fights than freaking Sorry does. But
that's
good,
awesome.
Good note. My number 3 is a game from 2022.
Love it.
Called Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. This is just another prime example of a game we were just talking about earlier with Mario, where every single mechanic reinforces the end experience, right? The game goes quickly. It's like 15 hours. It was actually lent to me. It's a physical disc, which I loved. I actually loved popping in. It's the whole reason why I bought the PS5 in the first place, was so I would have the physical disc.
It came in handy. It finally came in handy.
Yeah. Shout out to Dr. Z. But it's quick. It's fun. The guns do different things. The bosses are fun to fight. And then they do this really great thing, right? You get to the end of the world and you're about to go fight the final boss. And they're like, here's where everything is. If you want to go back through the levels and you want to go find all the secrets, like, here they all are. And you can just go collect all the coins and do all the secret things and do all the little secret missions that you want to do. If you want to do them, you don't have to dig around. You don't have to guess where you think they might be. They're all here in every level. And you want to go back, and there's I'm a big sucker for in a single player game of a battle arena. So, Kingdom Hearts, if you've ever played Kingdom Hearts, had the Colosseum where you had to get through levels 1 through 100, and God of War has a sequence like that where you can go just battle different people. And then Ratchet and Clank has their version of that, where you go in, the whole point is just, I don't want to do the story right now, I just want to battle some guys and unlock a new pair of armor. So this game lands number 3 for me. It's easy, it's fun, easy to play, everything is there, clean and simple, controls feel great. The end.
So I got a dirty secret. I've never played a Ratchet and Clank game. And I see this game and it makes me think, gosh, I want to play that game so bad. This is like one of those games that I might buy a PS5 for, but I don't think that's justifiable.
Well, this was my first Ratchet and Clank game. And I know it's a popular series, but it's kind of in the same vein as Spyro and Crash Bandicoot. Walk through a multi-dimensional level and collect coins along the way and fight kind of robotic bad guys. They had the whole theme of the game was Rift Apart, where they would have these, rifts open in time, these little portals. And that they did some really cool stuff with level design with that. I mean, I've posted many shorts about that on various channels, where you'll be on a rail and then you'll jump to another rail and then the whole environment changes and then you come back to the real world and you're kind of going in and out. You can pull yourself through space to fight your enemies. And so they integrated all that stuff really well. And, with a game like that, you want it to be easy to get through the story. And that's what I just continue to say, right? Human beings are creatures of convenience, and we are creatures of convenience, and we become especially that way as we become older gamers. If we look at something and we go, this quest might be 10 hours and I might get a cosmetic from this, I'm not gonna do it, right? Unless I'm on like, look, if it's my full-time job to play games all day and I don't have anything else and that's my full-time gig, I will do it. Right? I'll 100% every game. But
I'm not signing up for that. If that ever becomes my job, I'm not doing that. Like that's going to be my writer. Like I refuse 100% anything.
right. I'm not going to do it now, definitely. And so for them to make it convenient, you really don't have to. I really didn't struggle as as a easy gamer to figure out where to go, what to do, how to get on here. They just go here. This is where you go. Go fight this baddie over here. You're like, okay, cool. Like I know what I'm doing, and then little cutscenes along the way, and okay, this is fun, and yeah. So that for me, it's a clean and simple, cut and dry, easy number 3 for me. I was pleasantly surprised, and it was probably high on my list at number 3 because I had never played a Ratchet and Clank game before. So sometimes when we cultivate these lists, right, it is from personal experience, right?
Definitely.
If I've played all the Ratchet and Clank games, maybe this lands at number 5, or maybe this doesn't even make the list, right? But because this is a novel experience for me, that lands it higher on the list.
Yeah, and I think like an interesting observation is like talking about Diablo 4 just seconds ago. Like, Diablo 4 is a game that you've played 4 times, a Diablo game, right? I would assume you've played it 4 times. Maybe an expansion makes it 4.5. But I mean, like, you compare that you already have that muscle memory to in comparison to Ratchet and Clank, which you don't, and it's a brand new experience that's been well polished and it's your first time coming in. Like, you can see where the argument is made to put it high on the list. And I think it's fair. When I played Uncharted 4, I was blown away at how good that game was, and I never touched an Uncharted game prior. And I think that's totally okay. My number 3 game of 2023 that I played is called A Plague Tale Requiem. This is the second Plague Tale. Comes from Microsoft Studios, I believe. And this game is high on my list because it hit me in the emotion sack as hard as it could. And this game is gorgeous. It's beautiful. I was playing on an X Series, Xbox X Series. This feels as impactful as Last of Us. I think that this is a game that is absolutely phenomenal in many ways. The narrative is absolutely amazing. It is depressing, right? I mean, you are in the plague. There are people being murked left and right. You play a set of siblings. The younger brother has some sort of affinity with the rats within the bubonic plague type scenario. It's fictional. But essentially what you do is you play as the older sibling who is the protector of the younger sibling. And by the end of the game, it starts messing with your head in a way that you would see a game like Hellblade do. And if you don't know Hellblade, it's essentially a main character who is not a trustworthy narrator. So she's kind of inventing different personalities and she has voices in her head. And as you make your way through the game, you don't know what's real and what's fake. And they play on those mechanics later in this game in a surprising way. And at the end, like, I was stumped. And then when I had to look up the solution, I was like, wow, this is a really cool twist on a game like this. I really think that this is top shelf narration in video games. I really do. I think the narrative is amazing. The story is amazing. The character development is awesome. The way they integrate the different characters in the actual gameplay as you get through the mid and late stages of that game is really smart. I will say that I got pretty frustrated with the combat, and here's why I believe that happened. I think the combat is probably better than I give it credit for, but what would happen is this game is so heavy and depressing that I would play it for a while and I'd be like, I'm not really in the mood to dive into this. It's kind of been a tough week, and I'd play something else. And then, 2 weeks would go by and I'd be like, okay, I'm going to go back. Oh man, this narrative is great. Why did I stop playing this? Boom, boom, boom. And when you get into that cadence of like start and stop in a game like this, it's hard to remember the mechanics and then remember the enemy types and which counterbalances each one. We used to joke that there should be a dad mode to bring you back up to speed. There's not. So you just kind of like find your way through it and try to figure out how it goes. I believe that this game was held up as a critical success in the past. I don't know how many people actually played this game. It's heavy. It's really good. I would really like people to play it, but it's an example of how like some of these video games can be telling a narrative that is so heavy that it's hard to like engage with. And that uncomfortable feeling that you get when this game with a game like this is really something to experience, which is why it sits at number 3. I would recommend it knowing what you're getting into. You're going to get a top shelf, beautiful narrative experience unlike any other. And I think the story that it tells would be hard to tell in any other way other than through a video game, which is why I'm putting it at number 3 on my 2023 list. Phil, what is your number 2 game of the year?
God of War. God of War is my number 2 game of the year. This game had, it's just great. I've always said that if you ever played the original God of War and you know that the iconic weapons that he has, for them to kind of take and completely keep the character and change it for this game to be a more mellow, calmer character who's not going to rage out all the time and kind of create a completely different ambiance and environment is amazing, right? Because it added dimension to Kratos, that we're not just this rage monster that just wants to kill everything. The story was surprisingly touching. I thought the writing in it was great. The ending was amazing. And it really is truly a story about a father and his son and how they integrated all of the different Norse gods. I will say that I read the book Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman alongside while playing that game. I didn't do that intentionally. What happened to be reading that book. And it's just crazy to see the environment come to life. There was probably 50 plus hours of gameplay that I put into main story alone. God of War struggled from bosses are way too freaking hard syndrome. The side quest bosses were way harder than the main story bosses. So the main story bosses were pretty, 1 or 2 tries, you could figure out the combinations. The side quest bosses, and there were a lot of them, and I didn't do all. I did some. I think I slayed 1 dragon, and I killed a couple of the other harder bosses. Oh, they're no joke. And you get stuck sometimes in these loops where an animation loop where you're just going to get stabbed 5 times. And you're like, it's one of those moments where it's like, this is BS. You know what I mean? Like as a player, you're like, I'm just getting in this loop and I can't get out of the animation and I'm getting stabbed over and over again. So and it's just designed that way. But there were some struggles with this game, right? There were things like you go to a world map, and when you go around a world map, you can travel to each of the different realms that you want to travel to. And at times the map would just be locked. So you wouldn't be able to travel to certain areas at certain times because of what was going on in the narrative. And it was for long chunks of time. And that was annoying to me because once again, if you want to encourage exploration, you need to leave it as open as possible for people to explore whatever they want if they're in the mood for it. The other thing is that I am a person who does not like to play as the sidekick, right? If I'm playing a Batman game, I don't want to play as Robin or Catwoman. I want to play as Batman. If I am playing at God of War, I don't want to play as his son or someone else. I'm not there to shoot a bow and arrow. I'm not there to play as a side character. I don't care like that sort of narration of telling the different perspectives from the different characters. For me personally, doesn't interest me. I like to just be the main character and have that be my person, especially since you kind of have to get used to using other characters. And so that kind of annoyed me because there were a lot of sections, but it plays into the whole story, right? Which is father and son. So you play as the father, then you play as the son, then you play as the father. And it's like, it works perfectly together. I just didn't enjoy playing as the son.
Oh man, I gotta be the kid again. What is this?
Right, with the bow and arrow, and you're like, why do I have to do this? But really, what can you say? You took a game that 15 years ago was so linear, and you've added an open world. I could easily spend if that was my main game that I was just super into all the time. I could easily put up minimum of 100 hours into that game. And so value for dollar, value for time is there. And they pretty much, other than the small little complaints that I had, I can't say anything negative about the game. It was amazing. Fundamentally, this is one of the things that I struggled with when I was trying to buy the PS5, and I was on the fence because I take a really long time to buy things. Was like there was no generation defining game that was coming out to buy a next. That was like you have to buy this game right now to get the new system. That's how it was, right? I remember back in my heyday when I bought the PS3. I remember buying the PS3, and the games that I bought for the PS3 were Elder Scrolls Oblivion and Resistance, and I believe I got MLB The Show. But to me, Elder Scrolls Oblivion was a brand new title. Yeah. I had never played an Elder Scrolls game. Resistance was Fall of Man was a brand new title I'd never played before. And this new round of systems, other than playing games with better graphics, there hasn't been that thing there yet for me that said like, oh, you got to go out and get this. And that was a long-winded way of saying God of War was that game. Wow. Ratchet and Clank was that game, right? Those are both games that came out in 2022. I know that God of War came out in late 22, which is why I started playing it in early this year. But those were two games that, like, okay, if those had come out at launch of PS4, I mean, even though they didn't have any PS4s, that would have been like, we got to go to the store, we got to get this, we got to get PS4, go get it today, get the disc copy, and we got to play that today, right? But there just hasn't been a lot of titles like that. So that I couldn't say enough. That is a God of War Ragnarok is a system selling title that you go buy a system for. So number 2 for me.
Well done. Well done. Yeah, that is a game that is high on my list for being a system seller. Like that is something like, okay, I need to buy this to play this on a PS5. So my day will come, but probably not going to be today.
Probably not going to be today for me either for the Xbox.
I would say that my number 2 could be considered the last great game on the console that it was on. And it is Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. That is my number 2 game of this year. I hated Breath of the Wild. I would sit on discussions with gamers and listen to them gush about Breath of the Wild and how good it was, and it fell on deaf ears every time. I did not understand why people liked it. I thought it was really difficult to get through the different systems. It felt like it was slow. I had a lot of issues. We're not talking about Breath of the Wild. We're talking about Tears of the Kingdom. All that to say, Tears of the Kingdom has fundamentally expanded and improved on every one of the systems that I had an issue with in terms of comparing it to its predecessor. This game has done more in innovating its own platform and its own title than any other game that I've seen in terms of a sequel, right? Calling this a sequel to Breath of the Wild doesn't seem fair just because they built out so many different things. And I think that when you look at okay, from someone who hated Breath of the Wild, I think Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is the second best game I played this year, bar none. It improves on every aspect of Breath of the Wild, abilities that allows a player to systematically change what's going on in the environment, and the resources can all be fused together and turn into like different creations that you just come up with off of a whim. Like all of these different systems playing and clicking together in this madman type atmosphere in this world is like baffling. And it still shocks me that they were able to overcome what they have. I mean, in comparison, they are actually giving player direction, which is what I needed to enjoy Tears of the Kingdom. Like they're saying, go to this corner, look over here. If you go into this cave, you better kill the frog because that'll tick off something at the end. Like giving you purpose to be in that world really gave me a sense of something to do in Tears of the Kingdom. And I really think that this game has expanded on Breath of the Wild in so many ways that it feels like a completely different game while being in the same world. The abilities are crazy, right? Being able to fuse stuff together randomly and create a whole new functionality with it, nuts. Being able to like actually reverse time and play with the different elements and platforms and the puzzles is game breaking on many different ways. I am just really, really impressed with how this game had won me over. I think it's too long. I think the game is too long. I think that you get through that first push. It's like the first half, maybe the first 60 or 70%. You peek behind the curtain and you're like, oh, dang, there's still another 20 or 30% here. Which in Breath of the Wild, I got to the end, quit, and then people were like, did you do the thing where you did the thing? And I'm like, no, I didn't do the thing. I finished the game and saw credits and moved on. So I do appreciate that they like actually built out the entirety of the game to see the cool stuff. But at the end of the day, like I was ready for this game to be done. And there is so much of this game that you could go forever. Like you could literally go forever in this game. Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is an amazing accomplishment in many ways. In my opinion, it is one of the best games of 2023. There are a lot of good titles that came out of this year. I am somebody who normally stays away from Nintendo first party titles because I don't feel like the system is keeping up with the other products on the market. And somehow this game sits in my number 2 spot. Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is a feat. It's amazing. And I'm still blown away at the lengths they went to build this package out to the extent they did.
Well, I will say to you, as a side note, that I find it absolutely hilarious that you have 2 Nintendo games in your top 5 this year, which you are not. Nintendo is not normally your jam.
No.
Normally Xbox is normally your jam.
Yep.
So for you to have 2, that speaks a lot of Tears of the Kingdom. But yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that you said it perfectly.
Yeah, you look at, you start in the sky. Okay, there's stuff in the sky. And then you go down to the main plane and like, okay, cool, there's a lot of stuff down here, which is really neat to look at. And then when you realize that the entire map has been duplicated underneath your feet, and not only is it a whole new map, it's like Dark Soulsian in punishment, and forces you to use skills that you will not gain anywhere else and use resources in a different way that you won't use anywhere else. Like you really step back and you're like, wow, like this game is huge. I see why people have fallen in love with it. And you could play this game for 300 hours and I still think you wouldn't see it all. And that's impressive. It's intimidating for a person like me who just wants to get in, get the experience and get out. But boy, do I appreciate what they've done here.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. It was an amazing game. So good for you for landing that one. Good for you for sticking through it and getting to the end and like beating the final boss.
Well, you and I were texting back and forth, and you're like, "Yeah, no, I unlocked the final boss. I'll go do it." I was like, "Oh, maybe it was Dr. Z." Anyway, I was like, "Yeah, you should go beat the boss. Just go beat the boss and get back to me." And then it's like a text message 20 minutes later, like, "Dude, really? Yeah, really. There's more here, man."
Yeah, I mean, at that point in the game, I was like, how much more do we have?
Yes.
And it was like I was almost a little bit defeated because I had worked so hard to get there, and then I was like, there's still way more that we have to do. So kudos to them.
Yeah, and why do I love this game? I mean, I played this game while traveling abroad on a 2-week vacation to the other side of the world. And I was on another planet with limited Wi-Fi, no internet connectivity on my cell phone. And I'm in airports and people are speaking foreign languages and I'm locked in on my gamepad. And it's hard to separate like being on vacation in a beautiful country with like the game you're playing. But had I not been had I not been locked into a plane for 16 hours, I don't know that I would have finished this game. Nor do I know that I would appreciate it to the extent that I do. If you're looking for a game that you can buy and play forever, this is your game, but know that you're getting into a lot of game here.
Yeah, my son, I posted a short about it, but my son said, I want to start a new game with only 3 hearts. And so we switched over to my profile to do that. And he lasted all of about 10 minutes doing that. And he was like, yeah, this sucks. And I'm like, yeah, it's going to be like 100 freaking hours to get back to what all the hearts and gear and all the shrines and all the things you got to beat to get back here. So that nostalgia wore off real quick for him because it's a lot of game. And it's another one of those things where you're going to get a certain character and you're going to have your character and you're good. You know, you don't need to go back. You don't need to redo, right? You're happy with the armor that you have and the things that you have because there's so much to it.
Yeah, you know, one thing that I do like want to say lastly is like they've really set this game up to flex in different directions, which is very impressive, right? We kind of already talked about the underworld, but that is their take on like a very difficult, dark, Soulsian type game. You're going to go down here, it's going to be punishing, you're going to get 1 or 2 hit killed, and you're going to get over it, or you're going to find your way through it, right? And then you go and you do some of these temples, and these temples are like puzzle masters. Like these are puzzles that you're looking at and you're like, I have no idea how to do this. And then you like go around the corner 3 times and you're like, oh, what if I boom, boom, boom? And then you feel like you broke it because that's not how it should be done. And lo and behold, you're solving puzzles and you feel like you're creatively coming up with solutions that are laid there in front of you, but breadcrumbed in such a way where it's not obvious, yet it reveals itself over time. So as I mentioned, like Nintendo really pushes in these different directions in this game in a very, very good way. I thought the story was good. I thought the story in Breath of the Wild was horrible. And I was here for it. Like, spoiler alert, but at the end, like there's dragons and it's super like anime style stuff going on, and I'm like, you know what, sure, Zelda, like let's do, sure, why not, like I'm here for it. So I mean, overall I really enjoyed it. It sits on my number 2 spot. Will I ever go back and play this game? Probably not. Will I expose my kids to it more? Probably at some point. You know, when I'm building these top 10 top 5 lists, I always get into this place where it's like, am I lifting up the game I had the most fun with? Or am I lifting up the game that is the most technically impressive? And I try to find a blend of the two. And I think this one is more technically impressive than it is like high on my fun rating. But either way, in 2023, it's definitely worth mentioning.
Understood. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Here it is, the number 1 spot. Our games of the year. Drum roll, please. Your game of the year is?
Mine is Tears of the Kingdom. I put mine at number 1, but I'm going to say some things about the game. I'm going to do a little shitting on it.
I love
and then
it.
I'm going to
Bring
tell
it.
you why it's my game of the year. If you want to hear a bunch of good things about it, you can go see Shelby's comments on his number 2 game of the year, since you've made it this far. This game is so Nintendo.
Nintendo.
They do so many things badly with Tears of the Kingdom. The building is like annoying. I'm definitely not a build player. I used none of the building throughout the game at all. I didn't build a single thing I didn't have to build. They still punish you for climbing, but then all of the fanboys out there say, well, you can, do this side quest and get this frog suit armor, and then you can climb in the rain, and that takes like 20 hours. The placement for some of the quest lines is terrible. You get halfway done with the game, and I had not gotten the 5th sage, Minoru. Spoiler alert, if you've never played the game, it's too late. That quest took like 10 hours and was right in the middle of nowhere. And I was like, why am I doing this whole thing? Now I feel like I should be at the end of the game, and now I'm doing this whole thing that I didn't know I needed to do. The depths was the worst, because it's like I always say to you, if you want people to explore, encourage them to explore and give them access, and this does the exact opposite.
Great point.
You're running around in the dark. You can't see. You never have enough supplies and tools to go down there. They're almost telling you, we don't really want you to explore down here. Although I will say, I didn't complete this quest, but there is an area down in the depths that if you kill 5 Lynels back to back to back to back, you can get Majora's Mask. I killed 4 of them and then lost on the 5th one.
No. Really?
Yeah, I think the idea of the gloom hearts is terrible, because then you needed 2 separate areas of food. You needed gloom food just to free up your hearts, and then you needed regular food.
Dude,
you heal your hearts.
You went so much harder into this game than I did. I barely scratched the surface on that stuff.
Yeah, and there was no food to be found anywhere. So for whatever reason, they put way less food in this game than the last game. And so all of those things to say, it's still my number one game of the year, and here's why. Shelby made a great point in the number two. If we did a number two video, then you can check that out. If it's in this video, then scroll back and you'll see his great point about what makes you put a game on the list. Are you putting a game on the list because it's technically sound, or are you putting a game on the list because of the way it made you feel? And both Shelby and I do a balance of both. Like I said, I put Ratchet and Clank on my top 5 this year, only because I had never played a Ratchet and Clank game. If I had played it, I probably wouldn't have had it up there. But for me, that was a new experience. Tears of the Kingdom was every day on the weekends. My son and I sitting down in the morning over a cup of coffee. Well, he didn't have coffee, but I had coffee. And we would play this game. And it became such an inside joke that months after I had already beaten it, right? We had several friends over, and my son wanted me to show off to my friends how good I was at the game. This became a morning routine. And imagine this. When is the last time that you've played a video game, truthfully, where you are sitting around with your family and everyone's sitting quietly on the edge of their seat, and then you win and people stand up and are jacked out of their mind because you just beat something? That, to me, captures some of the joy of the community of gaming and what it means to like triumph over that. Ganon was way harder in this game than in Breath of the Wild. Without giving away too much, you have to fight that boss battle about 5 different versions and times before you finally get to the end. And so here's a pro tip for you. I went and did a side quest that allowed me to drop a temporary portal, and I just snaked my way through the depths to get down there to where Ganon is. I didn't even bother fighting any of those people. I just ran past them all. I looked it up. Wasn't going to do that. And then I dropped a temporary teleport pad right on the ramp to jump down to go face Ganon. So I didn't have to do that climb down over and over and over again. And I just jumped down over and I just teleported to there whenever I wanted to try Ganon. I probably lost 10, 15 times, maybe 20 times. And it's a 40-minute battle. It's like you're playing a Final Fantasy game.
Yeah.
And the day that we beat it, I barely scraped by with 2 hearts. And the whole family was sitting there. My son was sitting there. My wife was sitting there. And they were all being really quiet. And it was way past my son's bedtime. But we were right there. And then it was like, boom, I beat it. And my son was like, "You're the best dad ever. And you beat this part. And I can't believe you beat it. And I'm going to go tell my friends that you beat it." And even though this game has flaws, and even though a lot of the stuff, in my opinion, it was utterly stupid and counterintuitive, the sky area had very little to it, right? Actually, the depths, like we've already discussed. The building was like, this is obnoxious. And the game was built for older kids, not really for younger kids, because they had to understand how trolleys work and how to put bridges together. And this is not something that a 5-year-old could play.
Right.
All that to this aside, to say like those moments are why you would do it for, right? Like that's why I did it. And that's why it lands number 1, because unfortunately I had to consume God of War on my own because it wasn't something my son it was not appropriate for my son. But Tears of the Kingdom lands number 1. Nostalgic moments, having that joy of sitting around playing a game, beating it. Do I think it was technically the best game of the year? No. I think it was the best game of the year because of the way it made me feel and the memories. If I actually had to go with the most technically sound game on the list, God of War probably would have landed as the number one game. But because of the memories that are attached to Tears of the Kingdom, that's why it lands at number one. So that's number one for me.
It's well said. And I think like you've really tapped on something that is the best parts of Tears of the Kingdom, right? I mean, it's essentially those moments. Like you hit moments in that game where you are taken aback on how it all came together. Like you scratch your head like, man, it was so cumbersome to get to this point. But the fact of the matter is like it's a very, very cool incident when you see something play out so well. So I'm glad it's on the top of your list, man. I know that that's a game that you've like gone back and forth with and played. Excuse me. And you and I think, have similar feelings on it, like at our core. Like, I hate it, but I love it. It's such a love-hate relationship with Tears of the Kingdom that it's always the game that I go to make fun of, that simps love. But at the same time, like, I can't but admit it's a wonderful game. Like, it just does so many things so well, but at the same time, it's so cumbersome and obtuse and hard to find your way through.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Zelda first, before my son came along, I had the streak of never having beaten a Zelda game ever. And now that streak has been broken because I have beaten both Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. So I've never beat Majora's Mask. I never beat Link to the Past. I never beat Ocarina of Time. All of them. I started them. I got halfway through and then I fell off of them. But I think that Zelda has this really great lore, and I think that the core values of the story are that of hope, right? It makes you feel like here's this kid who's just trying to do good things for people, and he's just trying to take care of his neighbors and run all these BS errands that chop down trees. I mean, there's a section in there, if you really dive in, where you can rebuild an entire city.
Oh.
So there's an area, a whole side quest. The one fishing village that was there from Breath of the Wild is there in Tears of the Kingdom, but it's all been broken down by moblins, and you have to go in, clean out all the moblins, and then each house has a different fetch quest that you go to rebuild that shack so that you can go get your new supplies, your food, your clothing, whatever. Things like that, where the game is filled. Both Tears of the Kingdom and God of War actually were hopeful games. They were about figuring out who you are. They were about like coming to the realizations, being kinder. And I think that we need more of that, right? Like I can tell you that at the end of Tears of the Kingdom, I was like, I felt good. I felt like the story ended and I was like, that's good. Like this is like a hopeful ending. It's not so cynical or nihilistic or resentful or angry. It's just like a hopeful game when you beat it. And I think that we need more of that. So it does a great job with that.
Yeah, I would agree. It's funny that you talk about like rebuilding a city in Tears of the Kingdom, because that's not something I even saw. And I think that is the stories that I keep hearing from this game. Is like, oh, did you do the thing with the thing? And I'm like, nope, didn't even see it. And I put like a lot of hours into that game, In any other game, that time commitment would have been like, okay, yeah, I saw that, but I didn't do it. But I mean, there's so many things to uncover in that game that it really does a great job of drilling down exploration, which I think is really, really neat, right? We talked about exploration a little bit with like 2D Mario, but it's a different game. Like this feels like, oh, what is that building over there? And if that's unique enough, then it actually has something that has a bigger story or a piece of armor or something that is unique and gives you a reason to explore. And I really feel like they've drilled that down to such a good it's the essence of Tears of the Kingdom, and they do a great job in executing there.
Yeah, I mean, there's even moments, right, where, like you said, you just stumble along this quest, and I did it with my son, and you end up getting a golden horse. You end up getting Zelda's horse, and it's just little things like that make the game like, oh, like you said, oh, I had this experience. Oh, I had this experience. Oh, I didn't do that. And it's just so much. There's so much content. There's hundreds of hours of content. They just have to do some work in making things a little more convenient, right? If you're going to have a big giant open world, you can't have Link slipping on the rocks. Like you just like, and you can't make it 50 hours, 20 hours, 10 hours to do a side quest. One of the quests within that story of quests was killing a dragon. You would think that so I did end up killing the ice dragon, but you would think that would be enough to get you a suit that you could, but it's not. That's just one of the things that you have to. I never even got the frog suit. So
Man,
they got to just work on that.
yeah, and you're a tier above me because I didn't kill a dragon, I didn't kill a Lionel. Like anything that was hard, I was like, nope, I'm good. I'm just gonna float over and like move on to the next thing.
I love
Not
that.
gonna happen.
Well, I think it's time for you to do your number one game.
My game of the year for this year is a game called Star Wars Jedi Survivor. This is a game that I had a blast with. It's funny because like there's 2 games on my list of the top 5 that were kind of like picked over by a lot of people, and this is one of them. I think that this is one of the games that I had the most fun with this year. I will say that like technically, I know it came out to a bumpy launch. I saw no issues in regards to saves, in regards to technical issues. I didn't have to reload at any point. Like this was a clean experience through and through for me. So like Star Wars Jedi Survivor, story was well executed. Depth of the combat was much deeper than I initially expected. They have collectibles, which encourages discoverability and replayability in some of the levels that they're building. The level design is smart, but it really felt like you're jumping back into the scenes of Star Wars movies that you know and love. I have come to love these franchises over my lifetime, and when you're going into a situation where you're infiltrating a Death Star and they set it up so beautifully in the way that Respawn can, like it really is breathtaking and feels like something that's very special. Because of that, it's the Star Wars of it's going to give it a few more points for me in terms of enjoying. I thought the story was really well told. There's a good twist there in the end that I didn't see coming whatsoever. It leaves you it sets up the third game without being a cliffhanger, which is my number one no-no for games like this. You're going to leave us, or if you leave me on a cliffhanger, like I'm looking at you, Spider-Man Across the Universe, I am actively upset. The story is good here. Attention to detail is amazing. The Star Wars of it is great. One thing that I'm really impressed with is the combat of this game, right? It does borrow a lot from Dark Souls in that if you're not paying attention and timing stuff and moving around, you're gonna get murked. Like very, very quickly, you're gonna go down. I am more of an action-based player, and I thought this did a good job of blending an action button masher, admittedly, like I am, with Dark Souls, to the point where I was playing regular, and I'm like, I'm just going to turn this down because I want to see the end of it. I think there were a couple of scenes here that felt a little cheap, like, hey, we brought in Darth Vader, and it's like, okay, I see what you're doing. But the other pieces of the Star Wars lore that they're bringing in are really smart, and I think that what I was not expecting out of this game was for it to be as big as it was. And you probably saw this with God of War as well, is I was kind of expecting like a single player linear experience with maybe a little bit off the beaten path, but you get to 2 of these different levels within this star system, if you will. I mean, there's like 6 planets, but I mean, they're basically levels. 2 of these levels are like huge built out maps that have like hidden temples and like places that you can go that you can completely miss if you're not poking in the right corners. Very, very well done. Very impressive. Respawn is one of my favorite studios out there. I follow them in the depths. They did Titanfall, they do Apex, and Respawn also does this Star Wars Jedi series. So I am so excited that this game turned out as well as it did. Again, this is probably top of the list for fun for me. I enjoyed every moment of this game. Technically, also very impressive. Like I said, I didn't have any of those issues. They do the thing that you mentioned earlier where they're hiding very tough bosses in corners, and they're like rancors and stuff that you would see within this universe. They're doing the Metroidvania thing where you get the power up and you could almost go there, but you don't have the right tools, so you have to come back later. And then at the end, if you go through the last temple, they're like, here's all the things, go collect. I started going to that temple and I'm like, you know what? I get it. It's well done, but I'm not going to go see it all. So my game of the year is Star Wars Jedi Survivor. I think that it is a top shelf experience. I would love people that are even somewhat interested in Star Wars to play this game, because I feel like it came out right when Tears of the Kingdom did and it got overlooked by many. This is, you feel like you're dancing with a lightsaber, and the lightsaber actually means something when you strike someone down. And that is a hard thing to capture in the Star Wars universe, and they have captured it here. I can't wait to go back. I can't wait for a third one, and I can't say enough good things about this game. It's my number one game of the year. It's the game I had the most fun with.
Yeah, I did not expect that to be your number one game.
Yeah.
That's surprising, but you are correct that the timing of their release, it got pigeonholed right between Hogwarts with all of its drama. Atomic Heart came out, God of War had been out, Callisto Protocol had been out, all those big AAA titles had been launched, and then it came out, and then right after that, Tears of the Kingdom came out. And I mean, I know that you and I know from a creator perspective that Tears of the Kingdom took over everything. I mean, it consumed everything. It consumed all the content. It consumed everything that people were watching and talking about. So good on you for doing your due diligence here and sticking with this game and like playing it and enjoying it, because I do agree with you. This was a chunk of gold in a year full of gold when it came to games.
I would argue that I would argue that this game was more enjoyable than the last 3 movies that I watched for the Star Wars universe. Like, this makes me think I need to go back and watch those movies, because I must have missed something if they're putting out stuff that's this good. Like, what was I thinking with the last 3 movies? But I mean, I don't know your
Don't
experience.
do it to yourself.
Yeah, don't do it. Is it that bad?
Dude, well, the last 3 movies, like 7, 8, 9.
7, 8, 9. When Leia flew through space, I was like, can't. I'm sorry. That scene with Luke was pretty cool, like with the sand planet with the red sand underneath. That was cool. But Leia flying through space, man, what are we doing here? Come on. Can't
There's
do
just
that.
no rules. Do we not have rules? Like, it's just all the old men, right? Just talking about Star Wars going, are there any rules at all? Can we just break whatever we want to do?
Yeah.
Luke can't have a real lightsaber fight with Kylo Ren. He has to have a hologram lightsaber fight because I get it. I understand. Fine. Enjoy your life. But no, for me, like, I just have the game be the game, and like, just don't go revisit them. Like, I can tell you, I put the third one on, and I was like, when they were force grabbing a Star Destroyer down, I was like, give me a freaking break, dude. Just like, you're missing the point. And here's I'll get off my soapbox right after this, but here's my point to you. What people like about the Jedi as characters, first, they're kind of based off of monks anyways, right?
Right.
But what people like about them is not that they are these all-powerful, godlike beings that can do all this cool shit. People like that they're vulnerable. That's what they actually like, is that it's the Jedi by themselves, right? It's Qui-Gon, right? People loved Liam Neeson in Phantom Menace because he was sort of like this vulnerable character. He's stuck in the middle over, and he only has limited tools, and he's got to rely on himself, and he's trying to remain calm. Luke was the same way, right? You don't have to do all this cool, crazy pulling down Star Destroyers, lightning coming out. It takes away from the experience. A simple character who's calm, that's like trying to navigate their way through the world, is a way more interesting character than being like, screw it, we don't know what we're going to do, so we're just going to let them do everything, and then they're all going to fly around, and then it's the Superman complex, right? Superman didn't have a villain, so they had to invent kryptonite to be able to kill him. And that's a fact, right? People became bored with him, so they invented kryptonite to be able to kill him. It's the same thing with the Jedi, right? If you make it all powerful, you just keep extrapolating that until you essentially get to some omnipotent god or something that just kills everything, right? That's the end of it. So
the Marvel problem,
that's why people, it's a Marvel problem, right? It's like
right now
it just keeps... It just keeps expanding, and then you either keep expanding and then you just become the ultimate being, and it's like, oh, there's another one though. There's another boss that was in charge of that boss, right? Like in the Star Wars movies, right? Snoke is there, and what is he even doing? He just gets slaughtered in the second movie, and like we don't even know.
Have you seen the 6th one yet? Have you seen, or like whatever, the 9th one? Have you seen the 9th one?
I've seen all 3. I saw all 3 of them. I thought they were all.
So you watched the 9th one at the end. The end of the 9th one, like, was so disappointing. Like, surprise, there's a bigger boss. Like, really, that's such a cop out. I was so upset when they walk into that temple at the end. They're like, oh, guess who's here? It's like, are you kidding me? Like, that is ridiculous. Get out of here with that trash.
Just two old men just complaining about Star Wars. But it's true, though.
But
I mean,
Star Wars Jedi Survivor did it right. And if you go back and watch some of my shorts from that era, which is on a different channel entirely at this point, but I mean, it feels like a movie. Like there is the scene with the pilots flying up the pipe to like talk back and forth in the X-Wings. And you're like, this is it. Like we are in the movie. And it really feels like they took the essence of the best of Jedi Survivor and they built it out in a smart way with enough time to actually develop the characters and give a darn about what's going on with them. And it feels like the best Star Wars content to come out since Mandalorian, I would say. And like season 1 of Mandalorian. I mean, it kind of, I don't think, anyway, season 1 of Mandalorian was great. I think this is up there with some of the best Star Wars content on the market right now. And if you are a remotely Star Wars fan, you should play it.
It can be done well.
It can be done well.
It can be done well. You just got to take your time and create a set of rules and follow those rules.
And don't let Leia fly in space.
Don't kill off half the cool characters or have them do nothing. Don't kill Han Solo in the first movie.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Seriously.
I don't know. Seriously. Have a cool bad guy that's not whiny.
Or maybe like don't spend the first, 2 movies setting up characters and then just like they do nothing in the third installment because you had somebody rewrite it. Like, let's armchair rewrite Star Wars Episode 9 right now.
Flashcards.
Oh, well, that's it. We did Game of the Year, man. We did Game of the Year.
That's it.
We did. That's a wrap.